Okay, guys, so today I'm doing a list of top 5 bromances in comics, but I'm also going to talk about, I guess you could call them romances, so women characters that also bro out like bros. And yeah, this is pretty much a list of characters who I think get along really well, work together well, make an interesting dynamic when they're fighting together or working together or just being friends together. I am going to exclude mentor kind of relationships because I feel like that's its own whole list that I can make, and that could be a lot of fun. So this will mostly focus on characters that are either strictly just dynamic of friends just broing out, whether woman or man or whatever, and kind of just going along with the flow of fighting crime with style, or maybe it's not a crime fighting comic. Let's get right into it. So I'm going to start my list with Spoiler and Cassandra Cain. Now, I really like these two together. I'm not a huge fan of the recent run that's currently running with them two, but I think together they're really interesting characters because they are so dramatically different in the sense that Spoiler talks a lot, is very outgoing, and Cassandra Cain is more, well, quiet because of her life and past, and then they just work really well together. They fight well together. They're very different, but they also hold the mantle for the same reason. They were both Batgirls and now currently are both Batgirls. So I really just like that dynamic of working as a team, though being so different, they somehow get along together, making a really fun dynamic. Plus, Spoiler is adorable with Cassandra Cain kind of teaching her how to just fit into normal society. So overall, I always liked this relationship brought back before New 52, but I think they're trying to get back to that now, and I enjoy that part of it. It's just unfortunately the current comics plot is not for me or the villains, but I do love Cassandra Cain and Spoiler, aka Stephanie Brown, as awesome romances or bromances, whatever you want to call it. So probably one of the most famous ones is definitely going to be Batman and Superman, because they, if we're talking about dramatically different, they are pretty much the polar opposite of each other. See, Bruce is this brooding, kind of untrustworthy, or he doesn't trust anyone, and Clark is hopeful and always wanting to help people, and together they make just such an awesome dynamic, especially if you read the Batman and Superman stories where they kind of team up together. That's what I'm currently reading now, the omnibus, but I've read a lot of their stories together. I've always enjoyed how they kind of view each other as they're both the heroes of each other, and I really enjoy it. They both kind of look up to each other in different ways because they represent different ways to do things, yet they're both heroes. So that's what kind of the key component to them is, that they both want to do the right thing. They just go about it different ways, yet they kind of are envious of each other because of the way they're able to tackle situations. So yeah, I just love this relationship. I think it's a great balance when they're fighting enemies, and it just kind of makes it a really fun experience to see how they're both internally thinking of each other and the enemies they're facing and how they go about taking them down. So yeah, I've always liked this relationship. It's very different in terms of how they do things, but they also do it for the same reason, which makes them such a great romance. All right, we're kicking back to the females with Captain Marvel and Spider-Woman. Now, I can kind of take, Spider-Woman and put Jessica Jones here too, because I really think that Carol is just such a great character as a friend to these two characters, but I really liked what they did with Spider-Woman in her run, with Carol kind of being that supportive voice and always kind of calming her down and being that level-headed friend that you go to when you are just questioning everything in your life. I really just enjoy that as someone who has, a smaller group of friends or a smaller circle of friends. I go to them for advice, and that just reminded me a lot of that. I also really enjoy the fact that Carol is this very powerful being, one of the most powerful in the comic universe. And then you have Spider-Woman, who's just kind of a pretty cool character, but definitely a street level character. Yet they work so damn well together in terms of the dynamic. And it's almost reminding me of Superman and Batman in terms of the power difference, but the fact that they both are on the same level in terms of how they tackle situations, and their viewpoints are pretty similar, which makes them a really fun friendship, which makes them fun to read when they are together. So I really enjoyed this, mostly thanks to the newer Spider-Woman run that ended a few years ago. It really helped me grow this relationship and these characters together. My number 2 is definitely going to be Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. Now, these two idiots are the best dumbass characters to work together. I think that's why I enjoy them so much, enjoy them working together, is because they are both dumb as hell. But Blue Beetle is a little bit smarter, whereas Booster Gold is more of a fuck up. And somehow they work together well because they're both on the same level in terms of goofiness. Now, a lot of it evolved during the Justice League International saga or run, and that's what kind of created their friendship. But they've been friends since then, and they always make these really interesting scenarios where one of them screws up and they go to each other to kind of get each other out of these situations. Usually Booster Gold screwing up and coming to Blue Beetle. So yeah, they're just funny as hell. I think out of all the friendships on this list, all the bromances, these two feel the most like kind of laid back, smoke some weed and have a good time type of friends. And you need that kind of interjected with all these superhero powerful beings. These two are, well, the best dumbasses that can be friends around. And I gotta say, my number 1, and you might have seen this coming, is Luke Cage and Iron Fist. I mean, when I think of bromance, I think the two characters that work together the most, and these guys, not only do they work together the most, they have runs together the most. On top of that, they also just always kind of have each other's back in every single type of comic, whether it's the Defenders, whether it's in a Daredevil comic, in a Jessica Jones comic, any type of comic, these two work together, or at least when they need each other, come together to beat some asses. So I really just enjoy this dynamic. Danny's kind of that very rich, but also kind of goofy character that could be a badass martial artist. On top of that, you have Luke Cage, who's the more straight-laced, but also will fuck your shit up type of character. So these two coming together to work together to take down crime is really cool. And I love that they're the heroes for hire, for profit. It's just a lot of fun, these stories, if you haven't read them. And then also the fact that their powers are so vastly different, where Luke Cage is pretty much invincible in terms of his skin can't be broken, whereas Iron Fist has, well, the Iron Fist, so he will fuck your shit up with one nice big ass punch. So having these two characters have vastly different powers makes sense when they work together, because they create an awesome team. So this has got to be one of my favorite teams in comics in general. Now, there's a lot of great team-up comics, or comic teams, whatever the hell you want to call it. You know, you got the typical Spider-Man and Deadpool as a goofy, dumbass couple. That's right, they're couples. Do not fight me on that. But you also have John and Damian, which I really enjoyed. And that was my argument of putting them or Bruce and Clark. But I feel like Bruce and Clark obviously have a lot more time together, so they work together. But you got a lot of other ones. Spider-Man and Human Torch, Wolverine and Colossus, Kyle and Wally. I mean, there's just so many. And even if you go out of the big two, you got a lot of cool relationships like Hellboy and Abe from, well, Hellboy. So yeah, I really just enjoy like seeing all these different characters just nerd out and be friends, but also fight crime together or stop, you know, bad guys, things like that. Always enjoyable to watch. So I would love to see your list. What are some bromances or womances that you really enjoy reading, that you're just like, yeah, these two together are awesome? And, you know, try to leave out teams, like if there's more than 2 of them, if there's like 3, 4, 5 of them. I feel like that's a whole separate list. Or mentorship, which I'll get to soon, but that's like if somebody works together really well with another person, but they're mentoring or training them, things like that. I feel like that's a whole separate list. But I'd love to see your list on bromances and womances. Make sure you list them below, and everybody, have a good day.